Hello, everyone. I'm André Gomes, Head of Global Trends at Cullen International. Today, I'm going to be discussing with you some of the very interesting topics that every business leader, every policymaker, and honestly, everyone using technology should be paying attention to this year. There's so much to talk about, from geopolitical tensions, but also submarine cables, AI companions, rare earth minerals, social media bans for kids. There's a lot going on. I'm very glad to have with me, to join me today, Elena Scaramuzzi, Head of Global Research at Cullen International. Elena, great to have you.
Thank you, André. Very happy to be here in Brazil and with a very nice companion here
Yeah.
to talk about digital trends in 2026.
Well, 2026 started with a very high geopolitical tension. We also have many things taking place in the digital landscape, and I'm very glad to have you here to discuss some of these trends you already actually described in a report you just published, right?
Yes, indeed. And thanks for having me, by the way, and for people who are watching us. In this moment, we are in Brazil, and we decided to have two objects that will represent a bit our discussion today. One is, let's say, a scale. André is a lawyer, so he's the one who will probably, have will really keep stressing on the importance of keeping a balance this year and about this situation that we have in the digital world and what we could expect. And my object, my favorite object here is this rocket because it represents that the year is going to be very dynamic.
Absolutely.
And technology will be at the center of a lot of things. So thanks for having me.
So we have lots of things to discuss: submarine cables, AI companions, also critical infrastructure requirements, social media bans for kids. Where should we start? Critical infrastructure,
Okay.
maybe?
Yes, let's start, let's say, from the context first.
Absolutely.
So why this, first of all, why this initiative? Because every year we somehow try to identify what are the trends that are going to impact the sectors that we cover during the year.
Hmm.
Digital sectors like digital connectivity, the platforms economy, and so on. So this year, I think it's quite a special year. So it took a bit of time a lot of thinking, a lot of debating also within our team about what are the trends that are going to impact also on a global level the digital sectors we cover.
Hmm.
So
Okay. So we have elections coming up. Do you expect everything that's
yeah.
going on internationally to affect the digital landscape?
Well, we just saw, let's say that at the beginning of 2026, it started with a lot of escalations, let's say, in certain parts of the world,
Indeed.
especially. And there was also a rising of the tones in these international and multilateral relations in general. What is important to be aware of is the fact that this is also a year of important elections.
Hmm.
Of course, everyone is talking about the midterm elections in the US that are very important, but we also have elections, for example, in Denmark. During this year, we have elections also in Israel and in many other parts of the world where, let's say, it's very important also to test what is the situation, what is the status of democracies, what is the also the social tensions that might emerge. So this is something that will have certainly impacts on the sectors we cover, and at the same time, the digital sectors will have impacts on some of these, of these developments. So it will be a very interesting and complicated year to
Yeah,
watch. Yeah.
complicated. I saw a report published by the World Economic Outlook saying that this year the global economy is steady despite diverging forces. So this is just complicated language to say things are indeed more complicated than it
Yes,
needs to
indeed.
be.
The IMF came up with their annual report on the
Yeah.
World Economic Outlook, and of course they presented the situation on a global level, of course from a financial and economic standpoint. But it's interesting to see that they also mentioned, for example, possible re-evaluation of technology expectations. And so this is something that somehow caught the attention of our team, because it's re-evaluation of technology means digital technologies essentially, and of course it's these are topics that need to be monitored, and where policies and regulations can make the difference.
Yeah. So, what are the sort of broad areas of concern or research you've identified in your report? Digital connectivity infrastructure you mentioned, also platform economy and data services in general. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's in these are let's say three sectors, three pillars of our core research at Cullen. But at the same time, let's say I wanted to highlight angles that this year will be particularly critical. For example, from the infrastructure standpoint, what is really is going to be leitmotif is going to be protection, because it's really infrastructures that are critical, that are important for the functioning of societies and economies, need to be protected from, potential threats, but at the same time also from other type of risks that are really bound even to the technology itself. And so it's new technologies like AI, for example, some uses can represent some risks, despite, of course, being a huge area of improvement, of development, etc. So balancing these kind of risk and protecting situations is going to be very important.
I see. Any kind of infrastructure you'd mention as an example?
Yeah, well,
submarine cables we were discussing.
Yes,
right?
indeed. The submarine cables has been a new research that we developed in 2025, and a lot has been going on, and we see that in practice also as regards other infrastructure like data centers or towers, infrastructure, and so on. It's these are infrastructures that where there is a lot of attention by policymakers of protecting the infrastructure, and
Also considering some interruptions, right?
Yes.
Some cables were broken
Yes.
recently.
Yes, let's say that
Or
it's,
attacked.
there can be some threats of different types. But of course, what is important for many policymakers is the fact of being controlled, to have some kind of digital sovereignty that has become a term that is very widespread around the world. It's every country wants to have, its control of its own data resources, and make sure that the infrastructure that exists is well protected, and there is no excessive, for example, foreign interference, these kind of things.
Yeah, I remember seeing in Europe a cable security toolbox, right? They're working on it.
Yes, indeed, it's one of the ideas that has been actually last year. The European Commission came up with a document, let's say, kind of action plan. It was an action plan actually, with a number of steps that they want to take in coordination, of course, with the member states, and the toolbox to give some kind of guidance on how to secure the cables is one aspect. But there are other aspects about the protection. For example, having repair fleets that can somehow intervene more quickly in case of incidents and so on. and also, for example, identifying the cables that are considered of a priority for Europe. This is also some kind of list, really, that they're
I
going
see.
to put together to identify really what are the infrastructures that are to be protected primarily at EU level. So this is something that is would be unimaginable in the past, because submarine cables has always been a sector commercially regulated.
You're
So
right.
it was not something really at the core of of the worries, of the concerns of countries. There are, of course, a few exceptions. For example, the United States has a long tradition of regulating cable landing licenses, and there is a specific license needed. But for example, for Europe, this is something pretty recent.
Yeah, I'd say there's also a heightened interest in the case of Brazil. Since we're here, we were discussing with the telecoms regulator the other day, right? On how there's an increase in the concern, considering many cables, over 90% of cables are landing at the same place, the same beach in the northeast region, right? So, of
Yes.
course, some kind of protection zone would be expected, right? So, you know,
Yeah, yes. Let's say that protection zone is something that is has become kind of a good practice.
I see,
It started, I
I
think, in
see.
Australia, but it's something that is being considered in many parts of the world, and I understand also in Brazil,
Yeah,
in a new proposed legislation. I think, yeah, protection zones are can help certainly to secure somehow the cables from even from human accidents that
absolutely.
can happen, like during fishing or anchorage or dragging, and it's something that is it's quite important. But I would like to mention, by the way, that is the seabed in general is something is becoming increasingly important, and not just for submarine cables.
Hmm. You mean for mining natural resources?
Yes, exactly. And that is the second aspect of that I would like to mention about the infrastructure,
Uh
because
huh.
this is not only about the infrastructure, the services, the products in the value chain, but it's also about the elements, the minerals, the metals that are requested for the building and securing certain value chains.
This is sort of related to the geopolitical tensions we're seeing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and
Tell
yeah,
me
of
about it.
course we are not going to talk about that here now, but I think it's important to remember about the relevance of rare earths and elements like iridium, like lithium, like
Minerals in
others.
general.
Yes, and but even copper,
Okay.
And I think here there is something to be observed, and it's included in our short paper, and it's about this divergence of
Uh
approaches.
huh.
You see also about the for example, exploitation of certain industries, like for example revived interest in mining and so on. And last year, for example, there was one of the executive orders in the U.S. was about the exploitation of the seabed, so for the extraction industry. But
These minerals are increasingly important. I mean, all
yes,
smartphones have
yes,
these minerals, and but also semiconductors. You know, everything
exactly,
that's electronic these days is
exactly.
using these.
And the big reserves
Uh huh.
are in China.
Okay.
So let's say that Greenland, for example, is the second largest reserve of a certain rare earth,
Uh huh.
and certainly it has a strategic importance, not not only let's say from the security,
Uh
military,
huh.
whatever standpoint, but
Uh huh.
also for the economy of some countries.
Yeah, I remember seeing some stats mentioning that 70% of the U.S. rare earth minerals were imported from China, right?
Yes,
So
exactly. And
yeah,
that is
that's
where
a major
yes, and
dependency,
where,
right?
and I mean, we have been discussing international trade for now very intensely
Uh-huh.
already from last year, and these debates, let's say, are not going to go away this year for sure. We have already seen that. So it's really a mixture of economic interests slash security and sovereignty issues, and it's all together in a big melting pot.
But not everyone is going to the extraction route, right? I mean, I see a lot of debate about the circular economy, recycling,
Yeah,
also
indeed,
in this area,
indeed,
right?
indeed, and that is something where at Cullen we become very excited because yeah, we have our sustainability monitoring service,
Uh-huh.
and our colleagues are very very active on that. So we saw, for example, outside Europe and outside, let's say, the plants, the economies that are really investing in the circular economy and not necessarily in extracting new minerals, for example. And in the case of, for example, of Taiwan, that is a leading territory is a leading economy about semiconductors.
Uh-huh.
There are some of the big companies that are investing in exploring, how to recycle certain, materials and products and semi-finished products that are used in the industry to ensure that there is this kind of potential and the
Uh-huh.
exploitation of the possibility to recycle things.
But Taiwan is not alone, right? I mean, India, for example,
Yes,
is another.
India is, for example, is interesting because it's in our radar because they have a lot of even small factories and so on that are specialized in recycling scraped copper.
Uh-huh.
Scraped copper that, from telecom networks, I mean, you have all these, but also from equipment. You
Yeah.
can extract a lot and recycle a lot of interesting mineral, including copper.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of copper has been skyrocketing in the past few years.
It's
The
right.
price, I mean, and it's now it's not just about extracting new materials, but it's also about the possibility to recycle the material that has been used even for a very long time, like from network in the telecom industry.
Yeah, the rise of copper prices is also related to the increasing adoption of electric vehicles as well. So it's a rising
Yes,
industry. So
absolutely, absolutely, and that is why these elements are so important for different industries. But these industries are really in the digital economy. They are digital related. It's about modernizing the industry. So
great. Well, let's move to the second big area you mentioned, right? So data services,
yeah.
strategic technology, research and development. This is something covered in the report, right?
Yes, because I said we are touching different angles.
Yeah.
So in the data economy this year, I wanted to really stress how in 2026 it will be important to watch the developments in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's not just AI. Some areas are, let's say, capable of being used. Some technologies can be used in different areas. Both
What do you mean?
So we mention them as dual-use technologies because they can be used both in civil domains and in military domains. And of course, with the increased tension, there is increased attention also to the need to exploit, to leverage certain type of technologies to ensure better protection also in the military sectors. And AI, for example, was recently mentioned in a very interesting strategy that was put under consultation in Switzerland.
Okay.
That mentions, the relevance of AI also for increased, let's say, performance in military sectors and also used in, especially when combined with robotics, like, for example, drones. And so I think it's, in general, AI is involved, although we know that AI is widespread with many
Everywhere.
type of use.
Yeah, for cyber attacks, I was reading an article about how AI has been
Exactly.
used
Analyzing.
to exploit vulnerabilities
Yeah.
more and more. I mean, hackers can more
Yes.
quickly develop viruses and other kinds of malwares and other kinds of tools to exploit security vulnerabilities.
Oh
Right?
my God.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Well, there's also quantum technology.
Exactly. Quantum technology is another area where you see a lot of potential for dual uses. And there are a lot of research and development efforts around the world.
Any highlight?
Well, I think it's what is interesting about quantum technology is the fact that it's so critical for encryption and decryption. Let's say it's so for let's say in military sectors it becomes very important, but it's also important in civil applications. For example, the security of our banking systems and payment systems and so on, you need very secure encryption methods. And so quantum resistant encryption is a topic that was already explored by us last year in a new benchmark, but this year we are going to continue and even improve our monitoring because it's becoming
And there are new developments expected this year as well,
Yes.
right? For example, in the EU, there's an upcoming proposed quantum act, right?
Yes, that is. There was a consultation in late last year, and the Quantum Act is.
What is it really about? Funding for industrial development?
Yes, it's really intertwined with the industrial policy of the EU, but at the same time it puts and identifies new channels to somehow fund the research and development, because this is an area of research that is not like short term. You can see the results with continued efforts, and quantum is a topic that has been debated and studied for a very long time, but now it's coming to some kind of new readiness somehow. Industry is very interested and excited about it, so it's something we will keep on monitoring for sure.
Europe is not alone in this effort, I'm sure. China, is it doing anything?
Yes, well, China is quite committed to quantum communications. And indeed, I think, well, of course, they are committed to all areas. Also, quantum sensing is an area where there is a lot of development in Asian countries, also in Korea, for example, in Japan. I mean, this is a very hot area of research. At the same time, I think what is really impressed me also was, for example, the recent filing from China at the ITU of to put into order 200,000 low Earth orbit satellite.
What?
No,
Can
I mean
imagine
it's a huge number, but that shows a bit the commitment to let's say really achieving and having the right technologies in the right place, also to develop new kind of infrastructure, services, and so on. Because China, for example, is one of the countries already working quite a lot on 6G and on hybrid networks that are going to use both terrestrial and non-terrestrial infrastructure. And of course, in this sense, you see that many countries are racing to be ready, to have these kind of infrastructures and facilities to be able to innovate. And
I see. With a very clear view of which industry areas are more strategic. That's the key takeaway.
Let's say in China there is more, there is kind of a coordinated approach.
Uh-huh.
So you see it in the newest industry plan, for example, that is from this year until 2030.
Uh-huh.
In the industry plan, they mention about modernizing the industry in many areas,
I see.
and so I think this is part of the big picture, to have also satellite communications and infrastructure somehow um, revitalized and improved. So it's interesting. In the U.S., you see a lot of private sector initiative. So
Yeah.
it's an area, you see, it's even in the symbol here that I chose.
Yeah.
Satellite is going to be very important. And even, in the Digital Network Act
Mm-hmm.
in Europe that was published yesterday, there is a big chapter about satellites and about spectrum. And so,
Harmonizing licensing
yes, so I
requirements.
mean, these are topics that are going to be at the center of the digital policies and
And I'm sure
communications
you're
debate.
going to keep on following that very
Yes,
closely.
we will be
Yeah.
certainly following
Yeah.
everything, all parts of the world.
Let's move to the third area, platform economy.
Yeah, that is the longest part in the
Is
report,
it?
actually. It's, yeah, and it's where you see the biggest divergence of approaches. Let's say that this area is very important for, because it's developing and it's inevitable because the platform economy is already here. And now the problem is about the approaches about to what extent regulating or not. And there is where your symbol
Yeah.
comes in. The balancing interests and balancing, above all, objectives between innovating, and everyone wants to innovate, of course, innovating and somehow protecting other interests. And these interests are about competition, are about human rights, can be about core values. There are different names depending
I
on
see.
the kind of the jurisdictions we look at. But it's the objective is always the same: balancing the interests.
But let's get more concrete, maybe. Can you
Yes,
mention some
please.
examples?
I'm being too vague, maybe. No, I mean, it's, for example, of course, the U.S. is leading a lot of innovation, let's
Uh-huh.
say, has enabled a lot of innovation in the platforms economy. And there are some champions, for sure, we all know, at global level. And but also there has been, in terms of policy making, there has been some kind of reaction to efforts that are observed in other parts of the world to somehow balance the interests, of using also certain type of services and applications, and at the same time, protecting the public, for example, protecting the economy, and so on. So this is very clear. For example, in the EU, we all know about the Digital Market Act, the Digital Service Act. It has been implemented now. Last year, for example, there were quite a lot of decisions, new investigations
Enforcement
opened,
action.
enforcement, and so on. And that created a bit of, let's say, some reactions, let's say. So it was even called economic extortions in some cases. And that is a bit...
Very strong words.
Yes, it's a strong language, but at the same time, it expresses very clearly the fact that some kind of efforts in certain parts of the world to put some limitations to certain type of practices are not seen very well. And I think that is something that will continue this year.
I wanna further explore the contrast you mentioned between approaches. Anything else you'd like to say about the U.S. Because that's a very interesting. I mean, at federal level, we have this very clear objective to reach to achieve AI dominance, right, or to maintain AI dominance. But we also have some nuance at state level. There's a sort of internal conflict in the
Yeah.
U.S. that I think is very interesting.
I don't think it's a conflict per se,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's really about the fact of really avoiding fragmentation in terms of regulatory approaches
I
and
see.
legislative efforts and so on. At the same time, it's that is, for example, was in the AI action plan that was issued by President Trump mid last year, I think. I think it's, of course, there is this debate exists in every country, and also internally the United States. We are following for sure these kind of debates and developments. A lot is decided sometimes in court. So it's a more
Very contentious issue.
yes,
right?
and
I mean,
it's
innovation, the
yeah.
need to innovate and to promote the adoption of AI
Yes.
on the one hand, on the other hand, the need to prevent
Yes.
high-risk applications
Yes.
from harming consumers, I suppose, but also creating other types
Yes.
of risks, right? And we've seen this in practice with certain platforms, global platforms like Grok.
Oh yes,
Recently,
this
right?
is now the the new big headline.
But also other
Yes,
platforms. Grok
yes,
hasn't
but
launched this.
this is really a good example because this is the example of January 2026 that started with the suspension of AI Grok because of the the use that was made to create some non-consensual material, sexualized
content.
material, including of children, and that, of course, raised eyebrows in many parts of the world, including in, for example, it was suspended.
The UK, I think, right?
No, in the UK they started investigating.
Okay.
In the EU, they're also starting debating, but for example, it was already suspended in Malaysia and Indonesia. In Malaysia, they adopted an act that is called the Online Safety Act. It has the same name of the Online Safety Act that we have in the
What
UK.
a coincidence.
No, but I think the objectives are very similar. Of course, every country has its own implementation and tools, institutional framework, etc. But I think it's just to show that these objectives are not just in Europe, but they are observed also in other continents.
Absolutely. There's the case of Brazil, since we're here. Right now, the Data Protection Authority is implementing the so-called ECA Digital, which has the same sort of very similar objectives compared to the Online Safety Act in the UK, Malaysia, and other countries. And its approval followed a huge scandal on the use of sexualized content on social media, specifically focusing on children and teenagers. So it was a big debate, and we have the first implementation steps taking place this year. So
yes, but
also Australia, right?
Yes, Australia. I mean, we know that they put the ban, and it was implemented mid-December last year. Started being implemented. So of course it will be interesting to see the implementation, how it works. It was a very long debate there, but many other countries around the world are considering putting some limits.
To protect minors mostly.
Protecting minors, and that is really where at Cullen we will be continuing watching the kind of methods that are used, for example, for age verification, while not infringing the privacy rights, especially of minors. So this is, balancing protection of sensitive data with the protection of, the children themselves. It's absolutely important. And in that respect, I would like, for example, to add that there are many examples of regulations really addressing the protection of minors online.
Also in China.
Yes. China has a very comprehensive framework about that, and also about certain type of technologies. For example, very interesting these days. They are still consulting on a proposed regulation about the AI companions
Okay.
They call them agentic AI. It's a very long title of this proposed regulation.
Meaning
But
AI companions.
also from Chinese, it was complicated
Okay.
to understand. But I think it's the topic is very hot because it's about the use of these kind of
They're like virtual friends or partners,
exactly
right?
virtual friends, virtual boyfriends, girlfriends, and all sorts of things. Even psychologists asking
see.
for advice. And there have been a lot of complicated and also very tragic cases of teenagers who got instructions on how to do some self-harm. And these are things that, for example, China is proposing to solve by posing some emergency contacts and emergency things when some debates go.
I see. Depending on the content of the
Yes,
conversation, if there's
this is.
danger
I'm
of
still
harm.
studying,
I
the
see.
proposal, but
Uh-huh.
in my understanding,
Uh-huh.
it's, and we will publish about that after I understood what
Mm-hmm.
it's all about in great detail. But I think it's really about having some kind of emergency safeguard
I
when
see.
things start going in the wrong direction,
I see.
and especially for minors. I mean, there are some special rules, but it's not just about minors. It's
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
everyone because there are vulnerable users across all age groups.
Of course. But China, remind me, China has a very long story of regulating AI in a sort
Yes.
of vertical, very specific way, right? With new regulations coming up whenever new
Yes.
problems faced, right?
Yeah, the approach is exactly like this because we are seeing, on one hand, like in the EU, for example, or in Korea, we see even the Australian guardrails. It's
Uh-huh.
not legislation yet, but they already have quite a broad focus about somehow classifying the different type of risks.
Mm-hmm.
In China is a bit different because they look at the type, for example, of uses of AI, and they kind of put some kind of remedies. For example, the first example was with the algorithmic recommendations, I think, and that was mainly about in the tourist industry, for example, because there were some, for example, elderly people who were giving recommendations and also prices for hotels that were somehow based
Tweaked.
on the age group, these kind of things.
I see.
And
Not much
so
transparency.
yes, so transparency, and it's implemented by the antitrust authority.
I see. I see. Yeah, there was 2022, I remember, I think, right?
Yeah, maybe even earlier, 2021.
Okay.
So they started from that, but also there are some other regulations about, for example, generative AI. They have a specified regulation.
Also facial recognition.
Facial recognition. And there are several rules, and many of them were issued by the Cyberspace Administration of
China.
yes.
I see. One more thing I want to discuss: online scans. Very controversial topic. We were discussing this the other day as well during other meetings, right? So this is an area of regulatory development, you'd say?
Yes, yes. And while here in Brazil, I've seen your phone receiving continuous scams, but I think it's so it shows that this is a scandemic everywhere. In all parts of the world, the same is happening.
Massive number of calls received every day.
Calls and also messages, and so it's a very complicated area of research because also you see that depending on the parts of the world, you have different type of focus. For example, I saw that in Brazil they just adopted new rules about spoofing. And also
aiming to prevent scams as well, right? Not only.
But also they amended a few months ago the rules of Pix, that is the big platform that everyone is using to make payments.
Yeah, direct payments.
And so I think it's regulated somehow in a vertical way. In other contexts, you see more a broader approach. For example, in Australia, they have this anti-scam framework that is really a legislation that covers different areas. And also, I think for example, in Asia Pacific in general, it's quite at the at the top of the
Uh-huh.
agenda of many regulators. And
Australia has been at the top of the agenda for many years.
yes,
There's this
yes,
Scam Watch initiative
yes,
from
yes.
2006.
Yes,
20
it's
years
the
already.
20th anniversary of Scam Watch.
Yeah.
And if I think, okay, what scams did I receive in 2006? And I can't even remember where I was physically. But
Okay.
by the way, it's scams, it's really become an emergency. And that's why you see that from a light touch approach like Scam Watch, they have evolved to a comprehensive legislation. And you see that the Australian Competition and Consumer Authority has has a very strong role in implementing these rules.
Do you expect to publish new reports on that in
Yes,
2026? Because
absolutely.
there's
You know, we just started a big new benchmark, and it's going to cover the different angles of scamming, because scamming is not just in telecoms, it's also in platforms, and it's also in the banking system. So it touches upon very different areas of research that we have. And so it will be a good mixture of things.
I see.
Very informative, I hope, for our clients.
So this is, a conversation about the global trends to watch in 2026. What will be the global developments you're gonna watch? You're gonna expect to watch?
Yes, well, for sure, in the infrastructure area, we will keep on studying submarine cables, which is a topic I'm particularly excited about.
Critical infrastructure in general, you'd say?
Yes, infrastructures, and so submarine cables,
Data centers, maybe.
and also in Africa, because I think that is a region where where we'll see a lot of developments. So I think it's very exciting as a topic. We will continue. Then 5G and beyond, so the transition from 5G to 6G, who is doing what. Also, these hybrid infrastructures will be under study. And,
you mean terrestrial and non-terrestrial
yes,
networks?
exactly. So we will take a closer look again at the satellite side of things. So here is the rocket. And then we will watch for sure data centers. Yeah, data centers is absolutely, and also the use of AI in infrastructure to ensure efficiency, productivity. So it's not very regulated, but I think it's an area deserving attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'd say, if I may, also enforcement action this year.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
might expect some new
And that is
investigations.
your area of
What?
expertise, the lawyer.
Okay.
Yes, I think is important enforcement, because sometimes it's considered the weakest part. So sometimes there are a lot of regulations, and then they're
Indeed.
not sufficiently implemented and enforced, and that somehow weakens the efforts that are made in principle to create certain frameworks. So enforcement will be interesting to monitor from, for example, competition law perspective, and we have our colleagues who are fully committed and completely engaged in digital sectors. And so enforcement absolutely.
Yeah. It's going to be certainly influenced by geopolitical tensions.
Yeah, let's say that.
That's a complicated area.
Yes, and it's the geopolitical climate is not helping, let's say, but countries are really trying to push for their sovereignty and to ensure that things are going the right direction. What concerns me sometimes is the very long time frames that take in some parts of the world to ensure. But of course, it's part of the game.
And what people can do if they want to go deeper into these topics?
Yeah,
What
well,
can
for
people
sure.
expect from Cullen International
Well, first of all,
this year?
contact us. We are here studying. We are human. You can see we are people, and I think it's we are there, because we learn from the questions that come from our clients about not only we learn from the experience from the real world, what is going on, but also it's important, to stay relevant in what we research on. So if there are suggestions, don't hesitate. Write to us. We will be very happy to receive some comments and some suggestions on what we should be looking at in 2026. Our agenda is already super full, so I hope
Yeah,
we
indeed.
will
Yeah.
manage. But
There's
we are
5G tower companies, gigabit networks, submarine cables you mentioned already, cloud
yes.
regulations, AI, social media, so many
Yes,
interesting
so
issues to
many
follow.
interesting protection of minors, and
Yeah,
it's a lot of things. So but I think also in coordination with our colleagues, it will be a great teamwork.
absolutely. Elena, this has been incredibly informative. Thanks for walking us through some of the digital policy trends taking place, shaping up in this very interesting but also complicated year we might expect.
Yes, we'll be certainly studying a lot this year.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today's episode. This interview, I was very glad to be joined by Elena Scaramuzzi, Head of Global Research at Cullen International. As we just discussed, if you have any questions, comments, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.